Welcome back, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer1745 here with my continuing playthrough of Hearts of Iron 3 with Black Ice 9.11 and a whole lot of other mods. And of course, we're playing as Reich, Germany. Right, okay, a few things. We wanted to show off we have a big fight going here. Guess we can unpause this for a moment to sort of watch. Oh, what? Bunch more German fighters jumped in. Bunch more Allied British. It's looking like mostly British. RAF. Okay. There was also a big stack here going on. The Italians are battling the British. I think mainly over. There's notice some tactical bombing against this on this battle here. So I think that is why the Italians are fighting there particularly. Went into a... Oh, did we not get that one? Thought we did. No. Right, that's the last one. Added a bunch of Nebelwerfers. Rockets. Now since we're sort of talking about this, sometimes I make fun of, but it's also, I think, quite true in many cases. And this I'm talking purely culturally. Those of you who understand know. Germans like to over-engineer, over-design things. Doesn't mean it's bad. Doesn't mean that what they're doing doesn't work well. It can work very well, but they just want to take it, take it to 11 or take it to 12 or whatever. And the rocket artillery is a good case in that. The German army, before the war starts, starting in the 20s, the German army puts development money behind rockets as a possible replacement either for conventional, artillery tubes. They had the big Bertha, the Paris guns, in World War I, trying to shoot really long range, as well as, since Germany is banned from having a Luftwaffe, they're trying to develop rockets as a replacement for aerial bombardment. It's sort of both things, and I'm sure at the time, like, what the hell can this thing do in the future? We don't know, what the future will hold with new technology and trying to develop it. So the German army puts effort into rocketry, which is not a bad thing. They develop a really good rocket system for tactical type employment, not the big strategic bombardment of the V1 and the V2. Now the V2, which is a classical rocket, is done by the Luftwaffe, if I have this correct, and the V1, I think I have this correct, is a sort of a gliding bomb with a jet engine. That's done by the Army, or do I have that backwards? Don't know. But, or even not those two big sort of V weapons, vengeance weapons, but you could also have rockets on a more strategical, if you will, level, sort of like the Scuds, and those are sort of pretty big. Some of the other missile types that are much, rockets that are much bigger. Now, rocket is, to some degree, of course, if you probably know this, but is defined as a thing that has its own propulsion as part of the projectile. An artillery round, you have the thing that fires and it goes. So the bazooka is a rocket. It's just a very short burn rocket because you don't want to have it leaving the tube with it, the flames coming out of it, getting in the face of the operator. So it's a very short burn rocket. In that sense. Now, so they developed the Nebelwerfer. I'm sure I'm butchering that to some degree. Nebelwerfer. And unlike a lot of rockets we see then and since, it's a very short, stubby rocket as opposed to long and narrow. And they use they basically have a little port on the side of it that they siphon off part of the thrust gas coming off the rocket out to the side and use that to spin the rocket, to stabilize the rocket. So it's spinning as it goes through the air, and is rather accurate that way, and rather effective. But doing that makes the rocket itself much more expensive. And since you only use the rocket once, why make it so expensive? The Waffen, or the SS, has its own production capabilities out of the camp system and other things. They develop a rocket based more on the Soviet Katyusha, sort of like what we would normally consider a bit more normal. The Americans with their Calliopes on top of, you see them on top of the Sherman tanks, call them Calliope, which was a big sort of organ thing, I think. Lots of pipes that make sound noises, put them on top. Those are fin, little fins on the back of them, stabilized rockets. So they don't, well, you could angle the fins theoretically so that they spin the rocket. I know they do that to some arrows and things that have a bit of an angle to give it a bit of a twist, but it's a fin stabilized rocket and much cheaper to build, so they use those for the Waffen SS. The Waffen SS, I'm not saying didn't have any of these, but this wasn't sort of their thing. Mostly you see the Waffen SS rockets mounted on the back of the Muleter armored half-tracks. It's getting sort of technical, I know, but sort of late in the war, and they were much cheaper per rocket to use. But the problem with this whole thing is even though it's not necessarily it is not a better rocket, but it is a cheaper rocket that is relatively as effective and is cheaper to produce in numbers. The big problem is now you have two rocket systems with two different ammunition and supply trains. So from whatever factories, wherever there's a Waffen SS division that has rockets, you've got to ship those rockets. You can't go, oh, we're out. Does the normal supply chain of rockets have any spare rockets that they could use? Totally different systems wouldn't work well, or wouldn't work with each other at all. So the Germans, like I say, the Waffen SS sort of realizes, hey, we need, we are having production limitations. We need more, cheaper, wanting to solve the problem. Another example of Germans overbuilding things that just pops in my mind is the 50 millimeter mortars that the Germans used, particularly early in the war. Those, that are just on a, sort of a base plate, and a mortar tube doesn't have the legs coming out in front of you, for you not terribly familiar with it. The British got a hold pretty early on, probably from the Fall Gelb, French Battle of France. They captured some and got them out to Britain or wherever, and tested the 50 millimeter, as they tested all the German weapons, mortars, and found them to be too accurate. You may go, what, too accurate? Well, the problem is, with a mortar, it's sort of like a machine gun. You don't want a machine gun to be too accurate. You don't want to go fire the machine gun and have every bullet go through the same hole, because there's no point in shooting 20 bullets through the same person. A machine gun, partially just because it's vibrating as it's moving, is a just as I'm saying it, it goes from my mind. Boy, brain fart here. I want to say area of effect. There's a specific, I think there's a specific term I'm looking for. A beaten zone. That's what I'm looking for. Is a beaten zone. You want the machine gun bullets to land in a zone of fire, in a beaten zone. And so you want to beat that zone with machine gun bullets. Now, like you see in World War II, for the Vickers or the German Maxims, or presumably for the Russian Maxims, if you got it, you just sort of turn on the gun and go, but as it's going, you go pop, pop, or bang, bang on the side of, while one hand is on the, because they have butterfly hand grips, while one hand is on the trigger and it's just firing, you tap, 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 tap. And since you lock down the machine, you lock it down so it doesn't swivel fast or up and down. So it's sort of locked into the Germans with their sleds mounts, the British with their tripods, Russians did the wheel thingy. But you sort of lock it down into a position, not super tight, but you lock it down so you can't like re-swing it to a new position quickly. Just takes a quick turn of the handle if you need to do that, but you sort of lock it down and you just sort of turn the machine gun on, by holding the trigger, and you just sort of tap it, walk that fire across the field in front of you, and you'd have a bunch of these machine guns all in different positions walking their fire. So you're no longer even like, oh, there's a group of guys over there. No, you just turn the machine gun on, it just starts firing, and you just keep tapping it. You walk it across until it gets to the stop point on one side, then you switch hands to which is holding fire, which you don't take, you keep it firing the whole time, and you start tapping it back the other way. And the assistant or assistants, all they're doing is making sure that the ammo is feeding in, hooking one, because you can, with the Maxim type guns, you can hook the belts together. So before one belt runs out, you hook the new belt onto it. So you just keep the Maxim, or Vickers or whatever. Vickers is sort of a turned upside down Maxim action. Vickers company buys the Maxim designs or owns the Maxim designs and sells them to Germany. Or it's a complicated thing. I read Sir Hiram Maxim's biography, and that was probably 20 plus years ago, so I don't remember it well, but so I looked into this. But so you just sort of turn on the Maxim gun and just keep it firing, and that's why it's water cooled. That's why you have a thing in the top that lets out some steam into a, not at the top, but the way it sort of works, lets out some steam into another can. Use different ones outside of it from a rubber hose, and the steam would condense into the can as it cools. Can fills up, re-pour the water back into the Maxim to keep it filled. You don't really want to pee into the water cooling, though they talk about that sometimes, because one, it will stink. I mean, stink is okay, you want to live, but really the acid in the urine will really start to ruin the water jacket and everything else. So you just want to recycle that normal water through the system, and you just turn that gun on, and it's designed to just keep firing almost unlimitedly. Could be for hours. Normally that's not a realistic thing for hours, but for 20 or 30 minutes that you're just firing that Maxim gun, covering in a beaten zone as it's working. You walk the fire back and forth across the idea. That's how heavy machine guns were designed to work, and worked very well in World War I. Fluid battlefields in World War II doesn't work so much unless you get a situation like, hey, Normandy. If you had Maxim guns as opposed to something overheating like an MG42 particularly, but a Maxim gun that's designed not to overheat, you could have just started walking the fire up and down, especially if you get it sort of parallel to the beach, the invasion, and you just start walking it. You don't worry about hitting individual soldiers. You just start walking the fire. Beaten zones. Mortars are a similar sort of thing. You don't want to drop the round out of the mortar and have it always hit in the same spot, because one, your accuracy isn't that good, and two, as a human laying the mortar, your accuracy isn't that good. And even though, because you may say, well, you want it more accurate to do it. No, because you may be firing a little long, little short, little left or right. So you want to drop 3 or 4 rounds down it to bracket an area where they found with the German 50 millimeter, which I believe was rifled partially in the mortar. Not sure about that right as I'm speaking, but I think it was. It was very accurate that its beaten zone, without having to readjust the aim, was very, very small. And so if you were like to try to precisely hit something like, maybe, and it very well may have come out of the idea of trench warfare, that if you're firing at the enemy trench and you're landing rounds too far out of it, you're not being effective. So you want to be able to accurately put it right, figure out, have a spotter trying to put it right into the enemy trench. It's fairly close. You're either you or a spotter, but who's, hand signaling or yelling to you, where the shot's firing. It's all within the 50 millimeter mortar. It's all observed fire. You may, again, like I say, have the mortar specifically behind, and the crew masked from the enemy, you know, behind a hill, behind a tree, behind a building, but somebody within very close range is telling you it doesn't have the range for a radio operator or a field telephone to adjust fire. It's all observed fire by the operators, though obviously with a mortar it is indirect fire in all cases. So the Germans, like I say, do have a tendency to over-design, over-develop things. Doesn't mean that they're bad or they don't work well. Sometimes it does, because you're trying to work something to do well in a rugged field, but it works well on the range, not on the rugged field sometimes. So that's just sort of what the Nebelwerfers. Okay, and the German tendency of design. So Germans, you know, sometimes you want German design type stuff. Sometimes you want an AK-47. You know. Okay, we would give them metal for money. Sure thing. We want money, and we've got more than enough metal. I'm also, as I forget. One of you crew who's constantly posting, several of you, and I love you guys, pushing for oil. Yes, for just about now. I have Grozny, and I'm going to check just now, but I think those are on my cup. I think either they're still doing their last round or they are fully done up. We have refineries operating, which should more efficiently and maybe use less oil to create more fuel. Not quite sure exactly how that works. So we have the oil industry pretty well in hand for what we have, and currently it's saying that we have a lot of extra, so I'm not sure on that, and that's great. Going well. And we are building much more naval air. So we've got all that going. Just sort of want to cover some things at the first. I probably spent 2 hours before starting this without moving the clock. Okay, Stanleyville's still battling, or units still either coming in or retreating or whatever through there. Doing maintenance stuff without, like I say, without moving the clock. Yes, we control the Mediterranean. Yes, we control the Baltic. Heavy assault guns. Great. Okay, we're going to stop that. Don't know if I'm going to build any of those. Those are, I think, really good for taking on city combat. We still have London and a few places like that that may be hard fought city battles. Well, let's do better amphibious or special purpose type armor. And assault guns themselves, so that's probably grayed out. Yeah. So that also allows us to shift production around to something else also useful. Now there, of course, I have built a bunch of assault guns. Part of the reason I do some of that development is to sometimes there's events that are, you know, if you've achieved X level of capability, there'll be an event that throws in, oh, you can have kind of, you know, a special heavy assault gun unit or something. These guys are probably going to lose, but fortunately they will retreat into a well-defended locale back here with lots of units that I'll be able to deal with. But we don't have any good armor killing units. Yeah, we don't have any good armor. Oh, no, we do have some. Okay, good. We have those anti-tank. Those will be helpful. Probably I should shift one over to these guys once this battle is done one way or another. It looks like we're going to be facing. Yep, we've lost that battle. Oh well. That's how I think a battle should be lost. Instead of still having organization and having it shatter, they lose organization and retreat back, and that's fine, you know, not what we want to have happen, but fine. Okay, medium tank destroyers have advanced. and also grayed out. Okay. So, home front coordination, supply throughput. That's why I didn't pursue some of that. Okay, military police. I think you guys would get bored to death. Oh, we are building one jet fighter. Doesn't have a good name. As we can currently see, our jet fighters are this, I'm guessing, even though it says 262 Schwebel, it's more of, it looks like more of the Heinkel, early Heinkel designed fighters. I so love Hearts of Iron 4 in that you produce specific equipment. So in the standard game, yes, but that's just the standard game, you have fighter model, and they have some, you know, level 4, or, you know, not necessarily like jet fighter, but just fighter level 4, and they put a German name and image on it for Germany, and a British name and image on it for Britain, and you're supposed to then, well, tweak it out to, you know, maneuverability or range or whatever, you know, to sort of match your historical ones if you want to. And yeah, I totally get the idea that if you're Italy, you don't want to, I don't want to just have bad fighters because Italy had bad fighters. I want to be able to design, you know, good fighters. I want to watch them take on the American, because this is night, so we have the night fighters operating. They don't do as well when other fighters come to fight them, but at night they should do alright and do really well at chewing up bomber formations. See, that's what I want to have happen, because we've had, at least here, there's nothing other than an airbase to bomb. Maybe they very well could have been heading towards. Why isn't there any factories in Essen? Thought there should be. Okay, I don't know. But probably heading towards somewhere else, but got caught in this fight. And so this is what I want to have happen, is for whether it's the Americans or British to come in, fly in, and then get chewed up so bad they go home and spend ICs in repairing themselves. What I don't want to have happen is too much of this, of their fighters coming over, and definitely I don't want my fighters falling up to Britain. But and here, okay, see, we did sort of well in that battle. Now as they're coming home, they're getting jumped by more fighters, and then our night fighters are coming in, which aren't good against theirs, but at night they may do a little bit better. So that's sort of what I want to have happen, actually. I want it not just because that's the way it happened in the war or anything like that, but I want to have them to spend ICs on bombers, and then I shoot them up really badly, and then they spend ICs on repairing them. Preferably costing me fewer ICs than it's costing them. That's the preferred outcome. Okay, no longer receive that money. They're back up fighting a mixed group of Americans and some RAF by the later points of that. And so we've had some bombings here. And we're operating now. I know I recently put in a... Okay, these guys are still organizing up. I can get out there and patrol. Well, we'll be aggressive, I guess. No, well... They are close escorted, so, but we just want to... Yeah, we don't want to go so far out that we're battling units in Britain, but we want to make sure they don't come after our convoys in this area. Oh, a little bit more than we need. There we go. That's about right. So if they send ships in this area, we want to deal with them, as well as submarines. Still sort of waiting for a lot of these guys to get there. Well, okay, good. Fair stack of them are there already. That's a little better. Now, I sent these guys out, and I think they had 3 units with them, and now they only have 2. And you... Those are left over from... General. Okay, we'll give him the bombers and... Not Hans Kammler, sorry, no. It's fine. It's a long ways away. Where's Berlin? Berlin. Here we are. Figure Corps F. So we have some light bombers. You can see that they're not the best. Those have German models. Don't know, because when they... Well, okay, those are using German models. When they show up as this, I think... Because they have their sort of national identity, I think they are still doing whatever Hungarian model types are. I think that's the case. Okay, since we have a lot of fuel, we are starting to properly operate out here. And we now have you here. So let's air supply. These guys never made it. What? Well, that's where we need to air supply. Air supply there. Okay, well. Now that you're not having to cross the river, let's see about taking on that formation there. Oh, they're already retreating. Okay. Well, that's fine. Where they align themselves with? Well, sure, we'll take a Latin American ally. The Soviets, we would give them money for rare materials. No, thank you. I've got other people I think I'd rather like the Japanese trade with if I'm going to trade. No, thank you. You're still retreating back. You guys are moving in, but just barely. And what tech was that? Ah, defensive positions. Okay, that is under artillery, is it? Or infantry, or... Yeah, here we are. Okay. Stop that. I am shifting more forces. Okay, they've made it here. That's what I was sort of looking for. Okay, if I send too much, I'm gonna run out of supplies. But if I don't send some of these heavier forces, like, we're gonna have trouble. These guys are making it, but just oh so barely. You can see. And since there's even some heavy armor here. Without any tank guns, you don't do so well against them. Okay, we've won up there and taking out the capital of Norway there. Okay, well, no, you're still waiting on supplies. I think we are not maybe enough. Okay. Go back up to that. Proper reinforcements. Yeah, that one they keep coming in and out on. We are still shifting massive amounts of forces west. And I've even begun shifting some of the, Hungarian and Romanian types along our eastern. Oh, sure, of course, you may have energy. And we've won there, and we're gonna take them out. Actually, we're gonna let them do that, and we're gonna move you to German territory so that I can upgrade you. We're gonna upgrade the fascist militia to a more proper SS unit. So it'll be a more useful unit. Oh, actually, let's move you up to here. I think to the west is where you're more likely to be used. No. Well, they're all rushing in supplies, but doesn't seem to be. Okay, they are all supposed to be getting supplies in here. Even here. Even up here. I'm building an airbase up here. But we're hoping the supplies will trickle through to... Let's stop these guys. Cancel. Actually, let's just... They're just so slow. They're probably not doing enough, especially since we have these guys here. I want to get these guys in supply so I can push into these mountains. Self-propelled artillery, very nice. And that one is also grayed out. Okay. Well, I already put some carriers into production, so this may be a bit late, but I think we can improve some of the... aircraft there that will upgrade. These two SS Panzer divisions looks pretty good and almost ready to come. Ah! Okay, we've taken out a destroyer, but they've taken out two of our... And you're going to, yeah, retreat into there and do nothing else. And you retreat into there and do nothing else for at least a little while. Until they decide somewhere else is more favorable. Armor, you go down that way. No. Nothing I need to worry about. Okay, those two, yes. This looks like a good spot. Well, I may lose him under that. Alright. Yeah, he can keep this unit. I mean, he's maybe not the best choice for it, but... And he can keep the unit. The AI did a good job. Did a rather good job with him. Level 3, Panzer. Yeah. Well, let's move them actually over here. That's just an occupation group. Okay, well, I'm really wanting to win the air battle. So as you can see, I'm focusing a lot on fighters, but still naval air elements. We're still facing enough supply issues. Yeah, we'll do that. And I do know that these are all going to take fuel to operate. Part of the reason I'm putting so much focus and still doing it on fuel, even though it is sort of look like we're doing okay. Yeah. And then and escorts. Okay. You guys. Okay, now we're going to go upgrade you to just SS infantry. Just do that, and we want to make sure that that gets done in a timely manner, so we'll do that. Oh, sure. Energy. Great. Bring mud clears. Well, nice. Damn. Okay, well, these guys are here now, so how slow they're gonna move. I wish I'd gotten the support units, or units supporting their attack earlier. Yeah. Now here. Winter specialist. Naval. No, thank you. You guys just march down that way. Just so we occupy that. These guys are still coming back. Won't be overrun, fortunately. And to keep us from overutilizing supplies there, you come up to here. Yeah, we're going to take Totenkopf, the 3rd Panzer Grenadiers, the 6th Panzer. They're going to go to India. Mentioning that, yeah, before you go anywhere, you and you, no, okay, you're already leaving too fast. Okay. Get on board. Get on board. Now you come up here. And yeah. Let's also got these guys. Well, actually, which I should have done before now. No. No. Let's drop in the Seton and the Dresden into the Seton and not yet ready to try to do making good tactical fleets yet, but I think that'll be enough of an escort for these guys here. Keep them from being chewed up by the British. Uprisings. So these are the things that will keep happening in our German-controlled former Soviet Union, even though we've annexed it. So we'll need to keep, and they'll normally go down quick if we can get them fairly quickly. Leaving some of like these guys here that are just, you know, light infantry militia and a cool HQ, sure, for the Danish Freikorps, but to be internal security elements, trying to move all of the other good units out. Now we've got more than enough supplies again, so let's go down to that. Snow eases off. Okay, well, we're gonna pause this here. Let's save. And I want to thank you all for watching. I want to thank you for liking the videos. I really do appreciate that. And if you could, well, if you haven't already, please subscribe. Love to see you around more often. And if you could, please post comments, questions, suggestions, ideas, criticisms, corrections. Love hearing from you. See you next time for more Hearts of Iron.